Okay,
They don't do it.
hey, guys, sorry about that. Welcome to Trail Talk. We are on here just a few minutes early, but you know what? That's better than missing it altogether, right? Anyway, welcome to Trail Talk. We are live at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan, Oklahoma. And I'm Edie.
And I'm Mary.
Yeah, see, I saved that. I timed that perfectly.
That's right.
for her intro.
And interstate.
Yeah, exactly. And we are here today to talk to you about Chautauques. So I had heard the word, in Norman, there's Chautauqua.
Right, that's the only one I've ever heard.
But I had heard about Chautauquas and people referring to that as a thing,
Right.
yeah, outside of the name of that street.
Right.
And
Multiple streets?
yeah, I just, wasn't really sure what they were talking about. And then, like I mentioned last week, when, we were promoting the Chautauqua that was going on in Lawton last week, last summer, I went and attended. And that was when I really kind of started figuring out
Concept of what it is.
but I was only aware at that point of Chautauqua as it is today.
Mhm.
I had no idea about the history
History of it.
and it is a super cool history,
That's why we're here.
in my opinion.
Today.
Exactly. And so we're going to, I thought maybe we could like go through the information and then the pictures on the PowerPoint are kind of a progression of actual photographs from back in the day and kind of do some
Timeline
things like
type
that. Yeah. So first of all, I want to start out. This is a quote from an article in the Alaska Daily Dispatch dated August 29th, 1918. Now, in August of 1918, World War I had been raging for a while. The U.S. was just had not been involved all that long. And shortly after this was when the code talkers came, yeah, that code talkers all happened in October. And they arrived in probably August, September. The code talking began in October and the armistice was signed on November the 11th of 1918. The 11th day of the 11th month, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918.
11.
Yeah, easy way to remember that. Anyway, here's the quote. What do you think when you hear the word Chautauqua? Now, this is 1918, so it's been around for a while, okay? Do you know that the Chautauqua movement is directly fostered and supported by more personally interested business and professional men than any one world movement, either educational, social, or political? Do you know that the Chautauqua movement has grown in 30 years from one assembly to over 5,000 assemblies? Do you know that Chautauquas are brought to over 700 communities in the United States and Western Canada through Ellis and White service? Do you know that Chautauqua is annually attended by more people than baseball? So I love that.
When I read this initially, I was like, man, and I was like, oh, 1918.
Right,
But still a lot
yes,
for back then even.
yeah. And baseball was like a huge sport in those days. And this sit for 30 years, 1918. This thing's been going on for 30 years.
Prior to that.
Yeah. So here's how it all began. So the actual word Chautauqua is an Iroquois word, and it's a description of what Lake Chautauqua looks like. I don't know, maybe the Iroquois people are the ones who named the lake. It's in New York. And it means two moccasins tied together or jumping fish. So that must be the shape of it. It looks like two things joined in the middle. Yeah, maybe like two lakes put together or somehow. Anyway, but that was what it was known. The lake was known by the Civil War. So
Western New York.
yeah, 1860s. That's what they were calling the lake. Anyway, in 1874, two men, John Hyle Vincent and Lewis Miller, rented the site of a Methodist camp meeting to use the post-camp season. So they probably would have, like revival meetings
Right,
at this place.
Right.
Maybe they had camps for kids or something, church
But they-
camps
during that time.
during a certain time, and this was after that time. And they had a summer school for Sunday school teachers, and that became known as the Chautauques Institution. Now, it was more of a nationwide interest in the professionalization.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
of
big word.
teaching. But it was educational, not revivalist. So it was,
Mhm.
in fact, one part of this article said that today, pretty much every faith group in the United States has a cabin at this lake
On that grounds.
on those same grounds. So, it was more about, I'm gonna say, teaching Sunday school teachers how to teach.
Yeah, it wasn't really affiliated with one denomination. It was
Right, right.
generalized.
Here's how you, would accurately teach the Bible.
Mhm.
Here are some tips
Right.
for all of that.
just Some generalization.
And, right, and in those years, probably, there was a bigger, maybe the Bible was taught more than other parts of education,
Right.
where it was
Right.
included in education
Right.
in those days.
Right. For separation.
Yeah, and so that was the reason the Institute began. Then within a few years, it broadened. And it included all kinds of adult education. This is the thing I love about this. It was set up mostly for adult education.
Mhm.
And then there was a correspondence course available, which what we would call virtual learning today.
Right. You'd have to be on site.
Yeah, and so people would write and I guess sign up for this
Mhm.
correspondence course, and then you would be sent the materials and you completed the work and sent it
Right.
back in.
Right.
And so something called the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle brought that college look to working and middle class people. So this institute grew into something that allowed people
Later in life.
later in life, yes, to, I don't know,
broaden
maybe
horizon.
broaden their educational base, learn new things,
Maybe
maybe
this time people couldn't go to school.
study
Yeah.
for a new career.
Right.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I never
More
saw
farming,
anything about
you know.
a cost
No.
for any of this. There might have been a cost attached, but it probably was less than attending school.
I'm sure.
And you didn't have to go to the campus of the school. They
To actually be there.
to actually be there.
Mhm.
So, education was broadly defined to include arts and public affairs, which is, it almost sounds like it's the model for the education system of today.
Mhm.
No, didn't find that any of
Right.
these things were connected.
Well, it's
but
kind of like
that's
an
what it
upper
sounds
class
like.
type. thing,
True,
too,
yeah.
Even though it was offered to more of the working middle class.
But by the end of the 19th century, the institution was nationally known as a center for earnest, high-minded activities that aimed at intellectual and moral self-improvement and civic involvement. And that description right there made me think of Leadership Duncan.
Right, like clubs and societies. to help to
Exactly,
better
that happen within a community
Mhm.
where you have an opportunity to learn about,
enrich the culture.
enrich the culture, serve,
Mhm.
volunteer,
Mhm. Better the community.
do all of those things. And so, I mean, I just love how there's this kind of thread that brings all these
Right,
things
right.
together. So this Chautauqua movement is not directly attached to the Chautauqua institution where this idea began. But, that
Kind of branched
institution.
out from them.
Yes, yeah, through that literary and scientific circle. Especially in the rural areas where opportunities for secondary education were limited. So secondary is high school,
Mhm.
yeah. And so people's education, I mean, an eighth grade education at one time was all you could get.
That was the highest.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this is allowing people to learn above and beyond what opportunities they were given in their local schools. And so they began to refer to these meetings as Chautauques. Hence the name and hence the connection to the original
Right.
institution. But some of the topics were, they were influenced by things like libraries or institutions for literary or scientific study, mechanics institutes, lecture series. There was a strong influence in rural communities, and Chautauqua then kind of changed and it became the shorthand or the word for an organized gathering intended to introduce people to the great ideas, new ideas, and issues of public concern. And these were family friendly,
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't like there was a big uprising, people were sitting there protesting or demanding
No.
for things to change. It was
absolutely
more
not.
intellectually.
Because if you think about how much information we have access to today, people did not have access to information, communicating.
Even
That
a fourth of-
correspondence,
Even a fourth of,
a correspondence course, it would take a long time for something.
even the mail to
travel
generate,
mail.
right, just to even get it to them to know to send it to you.
Right, and so, this is a way to pass on that kind of information to people too. So by, independent Chautauquas were those that had permanent buildings and a staff were scattered throughout the US and Canada by 1900 with a real concentration in the Midwest. And,
Almost some 12,000 communities. had
Yeah.
hosted one by 1950.
by 1915.
Mhm.
And there was an agency called the Red Path Agency in Iowa. And they offered such a variety of lectures like Vassar educated lectures and Shakespeare, animal acts, vaudeville performances.
Yes.
I read Mark Twain was once a speaker, Carrie Nation
Like
from the
scholars.
temperance movement. You know, all sorts of people were allowed to come and speak and,
Give a lecture,
yeah, give a lecture and people could go and listen
and forum type,
they could think.
and
And
stimulated.
yes, exactly, because if you lived in a rural community in the late early 1900s, your day in and day out routine was pretty limited.
And, I mean, it was routine and
Yeah.
it was it was
Rote,
just,
mundane.
yes.
And I mean, you were working the fields, you
You didn't
were,
have any outside influence.
yeah. So having access to this sort of thing had to have been a wonderful experience. So the movement kind of died out by the mid-30s. Now, there were several reasons
Right.
that brought that on.
Technology.
And one of the first things when it said the 30s, I immediately thought, who had the money for it?
Right,
It was the Great Depression.
exactly.
So I doubt if money was available.
They were more interested in trying to survive.
Right, having money to travel and for people to take off of
Mhm.
work. I mean, maybe there were people available for that, but another reason was in the 20s, there was a sharp increase in fundamentalism in evangelical Christianity. And so that generalized, kind of religious teaching was not enough to satisfy.
Right.
And so I'm quite sure that a lot of church-going people were a little up in arms because they felt like it was too soft. And but that was not the purpose of
Right,
it. It was not
right.
there. It was not
Right.
ever
That was
meant
just
to
one
be
avenue
that.
of the.
Yeah, so anyway, but that fed into it. There were, the rise of liberated, educated women. More into the 1900s, women were attending college and learning, fighting for the right to speak for themselves and vote and all of those things. They had functioned, the Chautauquas had functioned for lower and middle class women the same way as elite colleges had for upper class women. but times were changing.
Right.
And so the interest in these Chautauquas dwindled and,
Mentioned the depression.
yeah, that was kind of the last blow. Now, a little bit about this original, the OG, the Chautauqua Institute.
Chautauques.
Right, yeah. So it is today, 150 years after the very first time they held
That's just
anything there, yeah. A 750-acre community on Chautauqua Lake in southwestern New York State, where approximately 7,500 people are in residence on any day during the 9-week summer season. So they have buildings, large buildings, small buildings, all of these buildings that available. More than 100,000 attend scheduled public events each year and even more engage online. And on their website, they have concerts, they have productions, like theater productions, they have speakers, they have all kinds, and that's just like on a yearly basis, not to mention these sessions,
That they have set.
the educational
Right.
part that they have. Chautauqua is dedicated to the exploration of the best in human values and the enrichment of life through a program that explores the important religious, social, and political issues of our times, stimulates provocative, thoughtful involvement of individuals and families in creative response to such issues, and promotes excellence and creativity in the appreciation, performance, and teaching of the arts. So, their focus has not ever changed.
Right.
They've probably added some things through the years, made some tweaks and
Right.
whatever, but,
Things that come about.
well, just, the changes and the times and needs or,
Cultural
yeah, things that,
variants and things.
yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, they may be talking about AI now,
Right,
things
right.
like that,
Oh, Siri and.
150 years ago, nobody had any idea what that would be. Now the history of the Chautauqua in Oklahoma, I thought this was, we need to bring it home. So that the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle is how this movement came to Oklahoma. During Oklahoma's territorial era, settlers organized a literary and scientific circle here as a form of self-improvement and education in Guthrie in 1890, Clarkson, a community that I don't know if it still exists or not, in 1895, Enid in 1899, and then other early towns prior to statehood. The term is probably best remembered for the circuit Chautauquas that followed the railroad lines and performed in small farm communities. Now, I did read that there were some people, the urbanization of America starts happening during these years too, the early 1900s. And so people are leaving the farming communities, leaving the rural United States and moving to these urban areas seeking a better life. Well, because of that, the Chautauqua movement would talk about the importance of these rural communities and keep them
Alive and going.
trying to. That was a part of their movement, and that was met with some resistance from some people because they thought that it was maybe
Trying to hinder
progress.
Progress.
Yeah, and so that was kind of a little battle that happened along the way. But these traveling and tent Chautauquas started in the Midwest around 1903 and were prevalent in Oklahoma by 1910 to 1912. So they had these brown tents they would set up, and they listened to religious leaders and politicians, including William Jennings Bryan, Oklahomans, William H. Alfalfa Bill Murray, who was one of he had a major role in writing our state's constitution, and he was one of our early governors.
Right.
Thomas P. Gore, who was one of our first 2 senators from Oklahoma to go represent our state and in Washington, D.C. And families would gather, so this is an example, they would have musicians, singers, magicians, theatrical productions, unusual acts
Yeah.
such as the Australian bird circus, all kinds of crazy things that would be great for families. I mean, someone who lives in rural Oklahoma is probably not ever going to get to see an
The
exotic
Australian
bird.
circus, yeah.
Of
How many
any
people in
kind.
any time, in even suburban
Well,
settings?
yeah, I mean, so anyway, in 1918, the lectures focused on World War I and the Oklahoma Council of Defense, quote unquote, 4 Minutemen and Red Cross speakers dominated. And then Chautauquas reached its zenith in 1924, which would have been its golden jubilee, the first 50 years. Yeah, 35 million people celebrated its first 50 years. Now we're 100 years away from that.
Right.
I don't know if 35 million people are still interested in Chautauquas, but we're doing our part today, y'all.
That's right.
We are
We're
bringing
bringing
you-
it back.
We're bringing it back.
We're bringing Chautauquas back.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
it up. Anyway, another thing that during that 1930s thing that happened is automobiles, radio, motion pictures, the same things that brought an end to the big rodeo, wild,
Wildlife
animal
shows.
performance shows like Pawnee Bill and Buffalo Bill Cody and all of those, all of those performers and everything, they all went the way of television, motion pictures.
Reach more people,
Well,
they thought.
they could sit inside.
Be up and sit.
Instead of having to be
Travel.
outside, they were seeing things that were from much, it was just a bigger, newer, greater
thing to
thing.
do.
It was the next big thing.
Right.
And so this served to be a part of the demise of the Chautauqua movement. But then,
Not to be forgotten.
that's right, in 1976, I need to say this part. There were local arts and humanities council, like the Oklahoma Humanities Council, who started trying to, they were responsible for the Chautauquas originally, and making sure that the arts were represented, I'm guessing, in all of that. But they also played a huge role in bringing it back. So in 1976, Everett Albers, the executive director of the North Dakota Humanities Council, launched the modern Chautauqua in America. And it changed the way it looked. It was no longer all these little
Rocking
tents and,
Mhm.
all that. It was a one big tent, and there were 5 days and 5 performers. And each of those performers, historical interpreter, it would be a historical
The first person.
interpretation of, like the characters that I do here.
Right.
At part of a theme. So they would all be connected to each other in this broad theme.
Right.
They would perform in the evenings, and there would be afternoon sessions about this
Workshop.
information, as well. So, by 1980, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, all of those states' humanities councils joined with the North Dakota and performed to form the Great Plains Chautauqua Society. And this is our modern day society. This is what is still here today. And so they do tour,
Right.
and there are tents. Some
Still.
places still meet in tents. Anyway, so in 2008, the Oklahoma Chautauqua returned to Lawton, just hop, skipping, and jump down the road here. And by 2012, they decided to bring the evening performances inside because of the extra hot weather, which we are having. And in 2022, they moved to the Albert Johnson Senior Conference Center, which is newly renovated. It's super
It is
nice.
super nice.
Very nice, yeah. So in the last several years, well, let's go ahead and we'll kind of
Take
look
it.
through, yeah.
Come
take a
on, come
little.
with us too.
Yeah. So here's a picture of one of the gatherings.
Oh, we are very.
Yeah, 1874. I mean, everybody came in their best clothes, and this was,
Posture.
right? These were probably not your most comfortable places to sit, although I do see arms, they're sitting like there are backs on those, where they're sitting, not benches,
I would
but,
say they're probably the most comfortable back.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so.
of course, if it is in the summer and they're in these 4-piece polyester suits, they're probably.
I bet those aren't polyester though.
You know,
Wool, probably wool, yeah. This is a poster from the early days of the
thing.
Chautauques Literary and Scientific Council, for 1888 and 1889. This is a picture of
There's the
hall.
president,
Mhm.
this is the chancellor here.
Yeah, this is the Hall of Philosophy, an artist rendering. And so this looks like an open air place for people to sit on the grounds there, probably at the Chautauques.
Says look
Lake.
up and lift up.
Yeah. Here, this is in Waxahachie, Texas. Now, the reason I chose this picture is because associated with the Institute, there are these permanent camps, a few scattered around. There's one in Texas and it's in Waxahachie.
So this was.
Uh-huh. And so I don't know if it has been there since 1900
Or when.
but, this is a picture from around that time
Mhm.
there in Texas. And, anyway, they are there for, they have these tents. Sometimes people would go and this is how they would camp too. They would
Mhm.
stay in tents. 1900, that's probably what they were doing
Right.
there. This is an ad for a 1906 tent Chautauqua in Kansas.
Less than 4 cents a piece, it says.
There you go.
$2.50.
They had afternoon, U.S. Senator Robert M. LaFollette, Eugene V. Debs. I'm sure these were people who were important for that branch.
Speakers, singers, bands, and entertainers.
Clay County Chautauqua Association. Bring your friends to the Grand Prix opening night, July 27th at 8 o'clock. That's 2 days from today. No, I'm just kidding. This was about 1906. This was a while back. But anyway, I mean, this is just, they are promoting, there's a lot of promotion going on. There's a lot of trying to get people,
Heard about the something Indians?
about the Indians, probably 1906, yeah. This was
She
from
got her
about
ticket?
1917, yep, her season ticket. Looks like there's, I don't know what those are. Maybe afternoon and, I don't know, but it looks like something that you get punched when you attend up in Minnesota. Gathering for school-age children
we go.
in Alaska in 1921. I just loved these pictures
September 17th.
and the fact that they were so far. It went so far from New York.
You can see they're like in character too.
Yeah, they are kind of
costumes
dressed
on.
up. They are, aren't they?
Mustaches and things.
Oh, they even dressed their little dog up here.
Mhm.
I just think this is so cool. And this is in Juneau, Alaska. Here, a commemorative stamp for the 100th anniversary. So that would have been in 1974. Yeah, 1974. 10 cents, obviously.
Right.
And then these are the locations of the 4 Chautauqua host cities here in Oklahoma. Altus, Tulsa, Lawton, and Enid are all host cities. So I kind of went back to 2012 just to get a smattering of some of the themes that have been
Mhm.
over these past
Mhm.
years. Behind the screen, Hollywood's impact on American culture. That one was probably so good. The Dust Bowl, strong wind, strong characters. I can only imagine that one.
Right.
The Cold War, Cowboys and Cattle Trails. I'm so mad I missed that one.
Mhm.
Although it seems like Jay Snyder
That's part of that.
talked about being a part of that.
Maybe he was.
He might have been. 20th century visionaries, catalyst for change. Oh, surviving the 60s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I saw that one.
Yeah. American aviation, barnstorming to Mach 1. This was the
That
one last year.
year.
And Pearl Carter's thought was one of the people.
Mhm.
So, each of these people, they are just
Traveling.
they travel around Oklahoma. They traveled during the month of June, and they were at each of these places for 1 week.
Mhm.
So this week, no, that was the first week.
But it's different people. That's Earl Warren.
Yeah, that's Earl Warren. That's him.
Oh, that's okay, so.
Yeah.
I see that there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's these people travel
Right.
and each week they do their same performances, then they answer questions. There's afternoon workshops. Tulsa still has a tent, and I guess Enid does too. I didn't find anything that said different.
Okay, so their tents are part of their.
Yeah, just probably this partly nostalgic.
Right. Cause I have a
idea.
tent there on there.
Mhm. Yeah, and so, I don't know, I think I mentioned this last week, but each of these people, they find out, like, we already know the next 2 years themes.
Mhm.
So someone will decide, I think, what characters
To pull in
will
from
be
that.
portrayed to represent that theme. And, people from all over the United States develop this character and write, I think it's about a 1 hour and 20-minute monologue. And
First person.
a first person representation of some event in this person's life, some way
To
of
summarize.
telling the story. And then they do a deep dive and really study the person through and through so they can answer questions
Like they are the person.
And the interpreter part, I mean, I read something that a man who has done this interpreting for a while, he said, as an interpreter, he said, I'm not pretending, I'm not an exact representation of that person. Like Will Rogers is someone that he does. And he said, when you interpret, you read about the people and then you choose a way to retell, trying to use parts of their personality and things like that.
That I told by them, interpreting how they see them.
Exactly. So it's, it has that little twist to it. Like the lady that did Pearl, she did it a little differently than I think I would have, but there were things that she talked about that I thought were important. And I thought, oh, okay, that would be a good thing to include in my interpretation of Pearl. But also I do a different, she was Pearl at an award presentation. She was receiving an award, and so she was dressed up more differently.
We do more children and time frame.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all a little bit different, but I'm telling the story of her life. She was telling the story of her life.
Right.
And it was just two different people, and it was
How you interpreted their readings and things.
Well,
they were portrayed. Right.
And it's just interesting to hear two different people's take on a person's life and how you would represent them.
Right.
It was kind of cool. Anyway, next year, Anything Goes, America in the 1920s. Which would probably be pretty cool. I'll tell you who might be a good one is Betty Rogers. Her and just all the things that she went through and how she met Will Rogers and how they got together. And then US in 2026, it's USA 250 years.
That's abroad.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one will be interesting to kind of,
How they rain that.
yeah, see what they're thinking about for that time frame. But anyway, I hope that this was interesting to you and maybe will pique your interest a little bit. I really want to make time for this. I think it'd be cool to travel to
Be a little rodeo groupie.
right, yeah, but just kind of be, I don't know, just to, or even go to a different state. You know, the Great Plains area, I mean, that might be kind of a,
So they each have their own, or is it nationwide, they all have the same thing?
well, see,
Is it just
because
their
we're
own?
a part of the Great Plains.
So it'd be their
state,
only, they'd have their own theme.
I don't know
Wonder how that works.
Yeah, so anyway, there's probably a lot more to find out, but I just, I thought that this might be a fun, interesting thing to, learn about. So, hope you have learned a little bit. There's
On
a
our
lot more.
Tuesday trail talk.
Right, yeah, Tuesday, yeah, this is a different day than normal. Forgot about that. And next week, it's, it's Independence Week. So we're gonna,
Where are you gonna take? I was like, am I following you?
We're
Where are we
gonna-
going?
we're gonna take the week off from Trail Talk next week.
Right.
So we'll be back, the week after the 4th of July. So you guys find a cool, fun way to celebrate Independence Day.
We'll pop some fireworks.
Yeah, we're 249 years old this year.
Right.
Happy birthday, America.
Almost there.
Almost there. That's right. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching today. We will see you soon. Happy trails.